All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome to the session on Market Conduct Insights, Building Trust in Insurance, and the vital role clear guidelines play in promoting ethical practices and transparency across the insurance industry. I am Tim Mullen, the NAIC Director of Market Regulation, and I'm very excited to have a terrific set of panelists for the session today. Before jumping into the session questions today, I'd like to make some brief introductions. The first panelist is Director Dean Cameron, who is the current chair of the Market Regulation and Consumer Affairs D Committee and past president of the NAIC. Director Cameron was appointed as the director of the Idaho Department of Insurance in June of 2015, is a third-generation insurance agent, and was the most senior member of the Idaho Senate before appointment in 2015. So welcome, Director Cameron. The next panelist is Commissioner Trinidad Navarro, who was first elected as the Delaware Insurance Commissioner in 2015. Commissioner Navarro is current co-vice chair of the Market Regulation and Consumer Affairs D Committee and chair of the NAIC's Anti-Fraud Task Force. Prior to his election as Insurance Commissioner, Commissioner Navarro served 20 years with the Newcastle County Police and was elected Newcastle County Sheriff in 2010. And while a police officer, I want to note that Commissioner Navarro received the department's highest Distinguished Medal of Valor. So thank you for being here, Commissioner. And then the third panelist is with us is Dave Buono, who is the Deputy Insurance Commissioner of Market Regulation for the Pennsylvania Insurance Department. Dave's been with the Pennsylvania Department since 2015, and his current role as Deputy, Dave oversees the Bureaus of Public Engagement, Consumer Services, Market Actions, Licensing, and Enforcement. So Dave's very busy in Pennsylvania. Dave's also the current chair of the NAIC's Market Actions Working Group, the Consumer Information Working Group, and vice chair of the Improper Marketing of Health Insurance Working Group. The format today is going to be a Q&A format, so I'm going to go through a series of questions. I think we have some mics out in the audience as well, so if we go through the session today, if people have questions, please feel free to stand up, raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. But before I get into some of the questions, I understand Commissioner Navarro has a special presentation.
I don't know why people are laughing. So, because it's going to be funny. So I think Commissioner Cameron and I had a friendly wager for the Eagles and Chiefs game yesterday, and had the Chiefs prevailed, I would have had to wear a Chiefs jersey, maybe do that chop thing, but they didn't, right? Go Birds. So, thank you. So as part of the wager, well, Director Cameron agreed.
I wore green. Is that not enough? I'm in enough pain.
To wear a jersey. So, would you mind? He's a man who pays his debts.
Really?
Yeah.
Put this on.
Yeah.
You sure it's going to fit me?
It's a XXX. So I want you to pay special attention to the name on the back of the jersey. So football fans will know what happened last week with Jalen Carter. Anyone? Jim, what happened last week?
Thrown out of the gate in Dallas game before it started for spitting on the quarterback.
So he was ejected before the game started. So that Dave and I are safe, we bought this mask so he shall not spat on me. So you don't want to wear this.
No.
No, wait. I also got you this towel. This was passed out before the game, so they could do.
Yeah.
It didn't work. But I just wanted to give this to you as well. I had the popcorn and the soda cups that had the Chiefs information on it, but someone threw that out. I can't imagine why. So, but I just have to say I'm proud of you. Oh, hold on. Oh, there you go. Can you say what that says in the front?
Second place.
No.
Super Bowl champions.
Super Bowl champions.
And
Thank you all for indulging us. Go Birds. I suspected we'd get that kind of reaction from Kansas City. I don't know why.
well, Kansas City will have another day.
Yes, we will. Yeah.
Travis Kelce will learn to catch a pass,
Yeah.
and we would have won. But that's all right.
Well, you look marvelous.
Thank you. Glad
right.
to be here.
I guess we can go on.
Anything else? Anything else? Would you like to make a further rebuttal?
No, I'd rather get on to something more serious.
It is going to be a panel discussion, but I thought, maybe we'll get.
I'm already in trouble, so I'm going to get beat up if I go downtown Kansas City today.
All right. Back to our regularly scheduled program. All right. As I said, I have a list of questions to go through, but if you have questions in the audience, please stand up, raise your hand. We'll get a mic over to you as we go through the session today. So the first question, I want to talk a little bit, it's actually a two-part question about transparency in the insurance industry and insurance regulation. And the question is, how do you think insurance company transparency with regulators and consumers impacts trust? And what are some of the best practices you've seen or implemented that help make company practices and regulatory practices as well more transparent to consumers?
Do I get to go first?
Sure, you get to go first.
All right, I'll go first.
I'll save the hard questions for Commissioner Navarro.
Oh, yeah.
I know where you work.
So first of all, and I'm honored to be here and grateful to be here with all of you and grateful for the work you do because you really are an integral part of our entire system. The market conduct regulation component is one of the most critical pieces and one that is not often well understood by the consumers and the public. First of all, insurance is a confidence product. Consumers buy it because they have confidence in the company that they're buying from. And they have confidence in the company they're buying from because they have confidence in the regulation that's ongoing. Like I said, oftentimes consumers don't often understand our role, and it's always important for us to explain that role and help the public understand that role. Without our regulatory system, without our folks on the financial solvency side making sure that the company is solvent, without you folks making sure that the company is acting appropriately and giving confidence to consumers that the company is acting appropriately, the system would fall. And without the system, without the insurance system, then our economy would be dramatically impacted. Our abilities to buy homes and start businesses and really live. These guys have heard me say it. Some of my own staff have heard me say it. I said it earlier at a CES conference. In our department, we have a motto that we want to be more like a flashlight and less like a hammer. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have the hammer in our toolbox. We use the hammer at times. But our preference is to develop a relationship with companies where we are the flashlight, where we're showing them when they have stepped outside the boundary lines, where we're helping them understand, first of all, where the boundary lines are, what the guidelines are, and we try to be very clear and explicit. But you know how it is, as clear as you can be, there'll still be some that will find some reason to push right up against it. But we try and be a flashlight and show them, and we even give second chances once we've shown them that they've stepped outside the boundary lines. We don't discard the hammer. We don't tell them the hammer's not available, but our preference is to be the flashlight. At times, we do use the hammer, and when we do, we also don't do it secretly. We make them famous for having had to use the hammer. We let them know, and we let them know if they aren't compliant. That's the potential consequences. I think it's important. Unfortunately, when consumers see us being public on some sort of action, that gives the consumers confidence. It deteriorates a little bit of the relationship with the carriers. So that's the balance we're trying to strike. But that's the reason why we often will share any administrative action or any action that we take against a carrier. I'll stop there, and maybe you want to add.
Yeah, I'll say some of the same things when you talk about being that flashlight, right? One of our biggest challenges is that the consumer often thinks that the Department of Insurance sells insurance, right? They don't necessarily know what we do until they need us. And so what we do, and we've been very successful, is shining that flashlight and telling the public the consequences of market conduct examinations. The public sees what we do for them by the press, typically, right? So we do news releases, I do TV and radio commercials to tell folks about the department, about how we can help them. And we've had some tremendous success stories that we share often in news releases. Two of the things that recently we were able to do was our mental health parity exams. Delaware people, raise your hand. They are so incredible at what they do. We've had all of the carriers in Delaware examined 3 times now. First time we gave them a free pass because we thought we'd find problems. We kind of knew they'd have problems. Second time, they saw a significant fine. We fined the carriers about $1.5 million, which doesn't sound like a lot. When you're talking about billion-dollar companies, it's hardly a blip on the radar for them. But the public knows about it, right? The public knows that we stood up for folks who have, whether mental health or substance abuse issues, and had been mistreated by the industry. Since that second round of examinations, we have completed a third round and found that the same prohibited practices were occurring. In some cases, they did take some corrective actions, but we saw, in many cases, the same problems. So we're in the process now of wrapping up one of the largest insurers in the country, and they fought us tooth and nail with respect to the fine amount, but we put that information out to the public. It's kind of a catch-22 in some cases, because the public will often say, well, that's why my rates are going up, because you're fining these companies. Listen, the fine is not, it's secondary. Really, it's the corrective action that we're looking for. And the only way the public would otherwise know is by telling them through the media or through our own media outlets within the departments, our website, and some of the information we put out to the press. But I think that's how we gain the trust with the public, is by telling them what we do and how we can help. And we do that very, very well in the state of Delaware. I'm super proud of our team. David?
I think Director Cameron has something real quick.
Well, and I was just going to add in. You mentioned it, the news releases. I think those are very critical. We've also developed in our state. We do a newsletter that's pretty frequent. It's not quite every month, but almost every month. And in that newsletter, then that goes out to all the other carriers. So that word kind of gets out to the other carriers that we held somebody else responsible. That newsletter also goes out to legislators. It goes out, and it goes out to anybody who wants to sign up for it. In addition, we have used, and I know not every state can do this, we have used consumer alerts and bulletins as a way to sort of help shine where the light should be, what's appropriate. I'll just share with you, we're right now, I know every state is dealing with Medicare Advantage shortfalls and companies playing different games, and And it's pretty interesting. So we've had companies who have stopped paying commissions. Okay, well, nobody feels bad for agents that much, so maybe that's all right. But here's the thing that's frustrating. They loaded their rates with commissions. They planned on that was a factor in developing those rates, and now they're changing it sort of midstream. We had one company who took their application off of their website. So the only way you could apply to that company is if you happen to have a paper application or you knew some way to get in around. We had other companies going to broker meetings and telling them not to sell their products. Now, we all know in this room that we don't get to regulate Medicare Advantage plans. It's a problem and something the NAAC's been trying to fix. But nonetheless, we do regulate many of the companies who are offering these plans. And what they're doing are unfair trade practices, in my opinion. So we're in the process. We're sending out consumer alerts. We're probably going to do a bulletin that sort of outlines, if you do the following things, that is harmful, and explain how that's harmful to the consumer. That sets the stage for any other administrative action that we have to take. So I think there's some proactive work as well as just being current. They have to know you can use the hammer. So that's the other reason why it's important to publicize it, is because they have to know, oh, wait a minute, we're not getting the hammer today, but we know that Dean will use it if we need to, or Shannon, or whoever is making that decision. So, sorry, Dave.
Oh, no, that's okay. Just real quick, we do the newsletter as well. Goes out to legislators, goes out to our department. It's a feel-good kind of thing, right? It talks about successes. It gives advice from the commissioner. It's something that's I know is very well read, right? But when we talk about building trust with the public, we often get calls about things like Social Security, right? And in other departments within our own state of Delaware, people will say, well, that's not our jurisdiction. We can't help you. Or they'll call about a Medicaid or Medicare issue, which we don't regulate, but it doesn't mean that we can't point them in the right direction or even make that phone call for them. Whereas we can speak to someone in management with a Medicaid issue or a Medicare issue where the general public cannot. And so it's not, often folks will say, well, that's not my job. Well, in our state, and I think in most states, it really is our job to point people in the right direction. And that's how you build relationships and the trust with your community, by going, it's above and beyond, but it really is just doing the right thing. So, sorry, Dave.
Oh, no, not at all. And I've been lucky enough to be chairing MAUG over the past year. And one of the goals that Director Cameron and Commissioner Navarro have placed on me is trying to make sure that we're more transparent than we had been in the past. Before, things would go in the MAUG and it was almost like a super secret society of awesomeness, right? But the reality is all that did was really make people confused, concerned, and not trust. So while we can't necessarily talk about these specific companies that we may be looking at, we are trying to be more open about, okay, yeah, we're starting to understand what's going on with total losses a little bit more. We want to understand liability investigations, modify comparative and unfair claims handling. We want to be sure that when aerial photos are being used, that, et cetera. So we're trying to make sure that we are being as transparent as we can to communicate the best we can with everyone. So that's a MAUG perspective there.
On the flip side, can there be too much transparency? And especially regarding conversations you may be having with companies or collection of data with companies?
Well, I think you have, there's a line, and it's a fine line you have to walk, because there are times that we hear things that we need to look into. And you know what? Sometimes they're not true. But if it gets out, it could destroy a company, and it wasn't even accurate. So Tim, I think it's a great question. I think that's the balance that we always have, because people are like, well, you're not being transparent. It's like, no, but we're trying to make sure that we're accurate with our transparency.
Just to follow up on that, I think you can't, just because there's an accusation or you begin to investigate a company, obviously that's not newsworthy. That's not something that, that should be announced. What is announced is when you've taken action, or, you know, you've won a court case, or you've won an administrative hearing, or you've garnered some sort of penalty. And part of the reason for even announcing that is not necessarily to kick the company, but to say to the rest of the other companies, you know, I remember a few years ago we had a company that wasn't paying mental health parity claims appropriately. They were denying all of them. Well, they got a pretty hefty fine, and we had to go after. Well, that became newsworthy. No company wants their name in the news that way. That can be Google searched forever, and so they want to avoid it, and really we want to avoid it. One of the downsides is that it appears, you know, I get it. We get into, you know, penalizing companies, penalizing agents. It almost sometimes can push the negative, which there's so much good that goes on in the industry. There's so many good examples where the company acted appropriately and paid the claims appropriately, marketed the product appropriately. And so that's probably the downside, is that we need to be able to figure out how to be as transparent when they're doing it right. I go across the country telling about stories where the company paid the claim that they were supposed to pay, and how that changed that family's life, how it allowed the widow to be able to keep the family farm, and her kids to be able to go to college, and the surgeon to be able to still collect money from his disability policy after he crashed his snowmobile. All of those kinds of stories, I think, have to be told as well. And the industry has to help tell those stories. That's not as much our job as it is theirs. But we also have to acknowledge that there's a lot of good that's done in the industry. There are just times where the industry tries to push up against the rules, and it's our job to kind of tell them where they're getting close to the edge or where they're violating the law. So I do think transparency is great. We can't, as Dave said, we can't tell which companies MOG are investigating at the moment. That doesn't mean we don't, as regulators, that we may not know that, but that's not a public conversation.
Yes, I might be a little more jaded with my years of law enforcement experience, and when I hear companies like United Healthcare tell us, well, we can't share that with you because it's part of an ongoing investigation. And they say that directly to regulators, and they essentially lied to our faces, right? I mean, they didn't take the appropriate actions to protect your identity. Most of you in the room were impacted by that. That's not finished. There hopefully will be significant consequences. I can't speak to them now, but that's something that we're certainly looking at. But for me, I've always been that kind of person that sunshine is the best disinfectant. I think I said that right. So that the public needs to know. And one of the things we didn't say was we'll get calls after the news release goes out, and people will say, that happened to me. You know, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. So thank you for sharing that information. So I always want to put out as much information as possible. That's the old PIO in me. Dave?
Yeah, when the companies try to say to the regulator that we're not going to share that, I have a bigger problem with that than the regulator being able to talk about what we're currently investigating. So I agree with Commissioner Navarro. That's, you know, if a company is saying that, that doesn't usually go as well as they would like, because there's really no reason why they won't share that with the regulator, because we do have all the confidentiality things in place to protect them and to protect us as we're investigating. So no, it's a really good point.
And Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about trust in terms of how regulators can build trust with the industry. I know you've been involved in some recent cybersecurity incidents. I'm just kind of curious. I know there's some really good lessons learned from your coordination of a cybersecurity event, and I wonder if you could maybe share a little bit with how you built trust with the company.
Sure.
And I guess beyond that, how you helped bring other states in to trust, right, what you were doing to move in kind of a similar, consistent
Sure.
direction.
In Pennsylvania, we had, I guess, the privilege of having a domicile company have a cyber breach. And the cyber breach was done by a company called Scattered Spider. And I'm going to tell you, they're really good at what they do. So basically, they breached the company through the company's help desk. So they called the company answered, and the person talked themselves into their system. And they did that, and by the way, that's not just our company, they did that too. They did that to grocery stores, they did it to department stores, they've done it to a bunch of different folks. It just happened to get us. Now, what happened as soon as our company found out that they were breached, they shut everything down. And this impacted 13, 14 different states. So now they have no systems, and 14 states are impacted. Now, my big fear was, as regulators and as the government, we always want to help, but sometimes our help may be, we want to know what happened and we want to know what happened right now. Well, that's not the problem right now. Right now, you have consumers that cannot pay their policy. You have people that just bought a car that can't get a deck page. You can't have a claim handled. You can't have anything because the entire company is down. And I was fortunate enough to have 14 amazing states that were willing to trust me and let me be the communication point to the company, because the problem was you couldn't even email the company. So I was texting them and they were responding back. So could you imagine all the different states hitting them at all one time when all they could do was text? Then we set up daily meetings with each of the states and the company. So it was 30 minutes. The states sent us questions. I text the questions to the company. The company came prepared and they answered them all at one time. So then if the states thought of other things, I think it was Delaware or Maryland thought about, well, what about the Department of Transportation? And we're like, oh no, so then we had to reach out to the different Department of Transportations, and the states actually helped the company try to figure out where the potential holes were in their handling. So instead of us worrying about how did it happen, why did it happen while it was going on, we were more focused on how do we make sure that the consumers are getting paid. Then we created communication that we sent out to everyone so they knew how to handle their claim. They knew how to do those things. And then we continued to do that for about a week, because it took the company, believe it or not, about 2 weeks to be able to turn their system back on. Because apparently it's not as easy, like you just flip a switch, it turns off, you flip a switch, it turns back on. It's not that easy. They had to go through every single one of their systems to verify that the information was not compromised. Then, in order to let everybody back into their system, they had to come in person to the company and go through in-person verification to reset their passwords. So, so think about how large this is. Now, the company appreciated us because we were like, look, we know you're going on with something. Right now, we're not worried about you responding us to complaints. We don't care about that. We need to understand, we care that you're not going to go canceling policies. Okay, no problem. We're not going to cancel the policies. And we continued to work together to really work through that. And I don't think it could have gone any better than what it did. And it was just trust of the states, the trust Pennsylvania that we were looking out for their best interests and their constituents' best interest. It was the company trusting us that we were looking out for their best interest, and we didn't care. Now we do have all the information now about what the heck happened, why it happened, and all that, because that was something that as soon as everything was up and running, like, now you owe us a response, and we got that to all the states as well. So Tim, I hope I answered your question, but it was just a lot of work and a lot of great partnerships across all lines.
Any other comments on that?
No, so we always tell companies that if you do things the right way, we stay out of your way. I mean, if you're not on our radar, that's a really good thing, right? In Delaware, we have about 150 domestics. That's a pretty good amount for the teeny tiny state of Delaware that has about 1 million folks living there. There's states that have counties larger than the state of Delaware. And we just secured in the last couple of days, a couple more domestics that are coming. And they're coming because we do this practice. I know it sounds like really cutting edge and innovative. We pick up the phone, right? When they send us a message or they call us or there's a problem, we answer it. And I know that sounds like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But there's so many agencies out there that it's not their problem. I mentioned that earlier. So being available, giving them information that they can use that will help them prevail. We'd rather them ask or self-report than for us to find out later on that they made some sort of error. So one of the other things that we do in Delaware, I don't know if you guys do in your states, but we have an agent advisory board or panel. So we meet with them quarterly to discuss issues from all lines of insurance. But they have come up with some really good ideas for us in Delaware that we have implemented that makes the process more fair for everyone. Ideas that we would not have otherwise come up with had we not had that interactions with the agents brokers.
Okay. All right, let's move on to, you mentioned innovation, picking up the telephone. But I want to talk a little bit more about innovation, going back to the comment Dave made about aerial imagery. And right, companies are using new technology. They're using swaths of data, complex algorithms, AI. I wanted to get your thoughts, because I think sometimes, right, insurance regulation is viewed as an impediment to innovation. I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of how do you strike that right balance between encouraging innovation, using new technology that is helping consumers, quicker underwriting, better claim settlement, but also maintaining, that necessary consumer protection that's needed?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not sure we have a great answer. It is a balance. I think you have to try and reach. And all of our, let me just set aside maybe the innovation component of your question, because I think it's fundamental in our responsibility, whether we're talking about form review, or rate review, or even the market conduct perspective. We know that consumers are better when they're insured. We have lots of issues in this country, but one of them is we have a growing retirement crisis because people aren't planning and retiring. We have people that can't access health insurance because they can't afford it and they're falling outside of a tax credit. We have people that can't access property insurance because they can't afford it, or maybe even some carriers aren't selling in the markets that they used to sell. Those are real world challenges for which the consumers want to know what we're doing about that. So I think all of that requires balance. We don't like it when carriers raise rates. We push back on it. We make them justify it. But at the same time, we can't afford to have them leave the state or stop marketing in our state. So there's a balance there. Innovation is really no different, and innovation is coming. As probably one of the older persons in this room, it has dramatically changed in my life over the time. I remember as an agent, we had one of the first computers in our office that would print out projections. My grandfather, I was a third generation agent, as you said, my grandfather would come in and say, I don't want your printout because I don't trust it. Get the one from the home office. Well, today it's ludicrous because so we've come a long way. We are, in our state, we deal with lots of wildfires and property insurance exclusions. And we're working through that. We did a data call to try and figure out. We have some of the concerns that were mentioned earlier about carriers being able to take photograph imagery and underwrite from a drone. And yet, some of that's the future. We have a new company just in northern Idaho that, and just off the university up in University of Idaho, that's developed a whole system using LiDAR that they can look at a person's home and tell what trees should be removed and what items should be removed to make that home safer against wildfire. That's coming. Whether the insurance industry supports it or not, that's coming. And I think it's important for us to be able to adjust and adapt to the times and keep those innovations moving forward. But I do think it's healthy for us to question, to make them justify how they're utilizing that information. Newsflash, every company is trying to make money. Every company is trying to figure out how they insure the good risk and avoid insuring the bad risk. As a regulator, our job is to make sure that all consumers have access to coverage. And so we have to balance that out and make sure that the carriers are acting appropriately within the ethical boundary lines. And I think we know, for example, we know artificial intelligence is a component. To be candid with you, I mean, a couple years ago, and they started announcing it, and I was NAIC president, and we drafted the AI guidelines. We ended up being one of the most forward-thinking organizations in the country. Those guidelines are being replicated by other organizations. I'm surprised, as the NAIC's done its survey, how I thought carriers would really jump on it, but they really haven't. Some are using it, some are trying to figure out how to use it. I know that some carriers are using it in fraud detection, and that's great. I know that some carriers are using it for quicker claims payment, and that's great. So where we have to make sure is that no consumer is being harmed based on that AI or based on that technology approach. And that requires a lot of mindset change and requires us to continue learning and continue trying to stretch our own thought processes. The rules and guidelines that we established years ago are great, but they need to be adjusted to keep up with the times.
And Tim, not too long ago, Pennsylvania set out a bulletin notice on just aerial imagery. You mentioned that. And I did have a company say, congratulations, you're the guy that ruined aerial imagery, which was hurtful, but it wasn't true. People are still using it. But really what our focus was like, look, we're cool with you using technology. That's cool. That's awesome. You know, I don't want somebody climbing up on the roof. That's dangerous, you know. But let's be sure that if we're using those photos that you really can see the damage. Because, you know, when you're taking it from an airplane 10,000 feet up, it's kind of hard to tell if that was a cloud or a line or whatever. If you can tell from the photo it's damaged, great, we're cool. If you can't, let's work with the consumer to get the information you need. Don't just deny it based off those pictures that you have that really don't show anything. So that's how we've been trying to work with the company, kind of going, hey, how would you feel if you got that letter and that you know that those pictures didn't represent what you think it did? So.
Yeah, so we put out a bulletin as well. I think it was New Hampshire that put one out that I saw in the press, and so we essentially copied it and pasted it. And although we didn't get blamed for ruining it, I think what it did was it just explained how we wanted them to operate, right? And so we put out bulletins for the industry that address things like that. Some of the things that industry carriers specifically will say is that those increases, and they'll say this to the public, were because the commissioner approved it. Well, I can't speak for the other folks here, but nothing ticks me off more than when I hear that, because quite frankly, we don't set the rates, right? If it's not excessive, inadequate, or unfairly discriminatory, we're compelled to approve it. Doesn't mean they get what they want. And so that's one of the things that the public will never know. We had one of the largest private auto insurers seek in Delaware a 37% rate increase. I put it on the shelf. I let it sit there. And we were getting to the point where they're about to sue me. And we were able to get the company to agree at 17%, even though, I know there's probably some actuaries in here, but 37% was within the reasonable, was within the range. And we were able to save, essentially cut it in half. Well, the public never would know that, what we did. So, we try to share as much information as we can as possible. Another question was about AI and technology. Look, I'm old school. The companies that have been around for 150 years, they've been around for a reason, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow in our fraud section, but what these new folks who are coming into insurance, they see this large pot of money in reserves to pay future claims, right? And to them, they're like, let's get our hands on that. And so, technology is wonderful, the different types of things we're seeing in AI. I'm old school too, Dean, where we put out a bulletin and regs that said you couldn't use things like credit score in certain situations, marital status, age, education, employment, zip code. Well, that's all out the window, right? Because no one understands what's in their algorithms, right? That all could, I think we all can agree that computers cannot be biased. It's a computer. But whoever designed it, whether it's intentional or not, we need to try to understand that. And that's one of our biggest challenges. And that's why, I'm not the biggest promoter of that sandbox premise where we loosen regulations for new companies to come in and try to figure it out. I'd rather you figure it out first and then come and see us.
I do think, Tim, there's also, as an insurance commissioner, as regulators, I think the future will be us using some of these technology tools on our side. Not just so that we understand what the carrier is doing, but even on our side to be able to do, I look at our rates informed team and the number of forms, the pages of forms is just incredible, the amount that they have to go through. We've got to make that process quicker. I do agree, Trinidad really gave not every response has to dignify a response, right? Yeah. The carriers want a yes or no. Sometimes a no answer or just not given an answer is the ideal. Just not approving it. We're a file and use state, so we have to sort of object in order to get more information. But I do think we're headed into an era where we'll start using some of this technology to our benefit to be able to understand. We want to see, did any carriers file a wildfire exclusion? Did any carriers, we'll be able to see that. I even think, we've had the conversations in the D committee about the PIC alert system and all of the systems that are run that way. I think the use of artificial intelligence and other technology pieces will help make those more efficient and more adaptable to our own regulatory systems.
So, Dave, I don't know if I know staffing is a challenge. I'm just kind of curious, maybe Dave in particular, since you're overseeing market actions and a whole swath of activities. Are you hiring data analysts, or are you moving into greater data analytics in Pennsylvania to monitor the marketplace?
Yeah, we're working.
Still using consumer complaints? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, it's all the above.
Monitoring outcomes, complaints, or actually looking at different techniques?
It's all the above. When it comes to trying to determine which way to go in relation to like market conduct or an exam, It can be the complaints. We do use MCAS data to understand potentially where to look and understand what that may mean. We also, believe it or not, all the states do talk. So sometimes we'll hear or see things and kind of go, hey, is that going on over in Delaware? And in Delaware, we're like, yeah, that's going on. And, we talk that way as well. So yeah, Tim, we are trying. The challenge that we also work through with the data analytics, though, is sometimes if you have like the big carriers or the small, if you have a small organization, the numbers are always going to look a little bit worse because the numbers are smaller. So it's really understanding what the data means and when you want to kind of understand when to do the exam on it, if that makes sense.
Dean, are you?
Any other?
Yeah, I'll just say that we have hired or secured funding for folks who can do the data analytics. I mean, we've had our members in our General Assembly make the decisions that certain data would go to the Department of Insurance, which really doesn't have much to do with insurance regulation. But we took on the challenge. But this continues to happen where you'll get these unfunded mandates that come to the department to do things that we've never done before. So that sending that data is useless unless there's somebody who can examine it. So we did recently secure funding for that. I can't hire them till October because they only fund 9 months when you start a new FTE. But it's something that we know is the future, so that we need to have someone who can understand how to actually do it.
All right. We only have about 3 minutes left. Are there questions from the audience? This is a time to pick the brains of two commissioners and a deputy commissioner. So, any questions? Yes.
Get the daylight out of her. Hello.
So when you're speaking in terms of the companies not wanting to cooperate or give you information, we've had instances where they come back and say, well, that's proprietary.
Oh, yeah.
We can't
Oh, yeah.
see that. So what are your thoughts about that?
Go ahead.
We get that a lot, where companies will say, well, we really can't share that with you, We continue to push them, and ultimately we have to involve in Delaware, we have 3 deputy attorney generals who work for us, 2 right now, and 1 we're going to bring back on board pretty soon. But, once they start saying things like that, and we just really have to get the attorneys involved because, quite frankly, a lot of that data is public and it's just escape. It's a way out.
So the only thing I would add to that, certainly I would agree with Trinidad, but in our state, we try, first of all, to have a relationship. I try and have a relationship with the senior officials of most of the companies that are in Idaho. I'm a smaller state, so I can do that. I don't have as many domestics as some other states. So I try to have that relationship. And for my team, I would ask them to escalate it to me, maybe before getting the attorneys involved, but sometimes we have to. Sometimes it's their attorneys or their folks pushing back, and you've got to get it beyond them. You've got to go to the next level up. It needs to go to their compliance folks or to their legal counsel, who's going to say to them, look, you can't really withhold it. Sometimes we have to explain to them what our confidentiality laws say, and that even though it's proprietary, that doesn't mean it's going to be shared publicly with their competitors. It means that we're looking at it. It's a good way for them to get fined, is if they still refuse. And I think ultimately they come to the conclusion that we do hold all of the levers. It's a matter of how much time and energy do they want to expend, and that's why I like to escalate it. I mean, if I had a company saying that to me, one of my domestics saying that to me right now, I would call their CEO and say, this is what your folks are saying. I don't think you want to play this game because it doesn't end well. So, right. I'm not sure. I can't hear the last part of that. Sorry.
How else can you prove it
if you can't see it?
Right.
Yeah, it absolutely is material for us. We try, I'm not saying we have never asked a question we didn't need to know the answer to, but we really try both on the consumer side, on the consumer affairs side of the complaint, or on the market conduct. We really tried to hone down the question to make sure we're asking at the root of the issue. We try, and I know sometimes this is a little bit of an issue for the NAIC. We try to avoid going on fishing expeditions. I love to fish, but I don't want to fish with my insurance companies. I'm not asking them so that I can try and catch them in something. Usually when we're asking them a question, it's because we've got some sort of evidence that warrants us asking.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are right at time. So thank you again for the panelists. Great session, good information. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed the day. There is a networking reception at 5:30, so hopefully people will have a little bit of time, regroup, and come to the network reception. Thank you.